The point home we're pushing policies to lower construction costs, cut absurd regulations, and incentivize the private sector to build more homes. We're not just promising to help people rent, we're creating paths for them to own. A round of applause erupted. This time it wasn't scattered, it was clear and decisive. In the front row, an older audience member nodded while a few younger ones raised their phones to capture the moment. Karoline didn't need to say more. She leaned back slightly in her chair, her expression free of arrogance, just the confidence of someone who'd scored a point on social media. Short clips began to spread. A major account noted, Leavitt doesn't just point out the problem, she offers a way out. Across the stage, Jasmine Crockett maintained a calm face, but her eyes couldn't hide the tension. Karoline Leavitt had taken the upper hand with sharpness and confidence, leaving her opponent on the defensive, but the studio still buzzed with anticipation, the audience eager for the next round of debate. The host, a veteran journalist, maintained her composed demeanor, stepping forward. Her smooth voice rang out through the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, we've just witnessed sharply contrasting views on immigration, one side emphasizing security, the other humanity. Now let's move to another issue that hits every family: housing. From the neighborhoods in Texas where Ms. Crockett represents to the federal policies Ms. Leavitt is helping shape, the housing crisis is undeniable. She turned her eyes on Crockett, seamlessly tying the thread from the previous round. Crockett, in the earlier debate, you emphasize social justice as a cornerstone of your policies. So on the issue of housing, does this remain your guiding principle in your approach? Jasmine Crockett sat up straight, her eyes gleaming with determination, as if she wanted to erase the aftermath of the previous round. She took a deep breath, not to stay calm, but to speak clearly without wavering. I've seen workers pushed out of their homes because rent doubled in just a few years, families with young kids sleeping in cars or crammed into overcrowded shelters. My bill invests $50 billion in building affordable housing, expanding rent subsidies, and most importantly, protecting the homeless from being kicked out of shelters in the middle of the night. Her voice was firm, her gaze directed at the audience as if to say, I'm speaking for you. A few bursts of applause rang out, not too loud, but enough to break the silence. Some nodded, others quietly pulled out their phones, starting to record. The host nodded, her voice maintaining its calm, but her eyes clearly tracking the rhythm of the exchange closely. Ms. Crockett has offered an emotional and very specific perspective, a plan to directly support people in this crisis. Ms. Leavitt, how do you assess this bill, and what's different about your approach? The question was posed clearly, impartially, but it was unmistakably passing the ball to Karoline Leavitt's court. Karoline tilted her head slightly, her face showing no trace of tension. On the contrary, she seemed to have been waiting for this moment. Her eyes glinted with confidence, not arrogance, but the assurance of someone who'd prepared thoroughly. First, I thank Ms. Crockett for highlighting real-life stories. We all agree the housing crisis is serious, but solutions need to be practical. She paused briefly, then continued, her voice steady but sharper. A $50 billion proposal sounds generous, but it's not feasible in the current budget, especially with the national debt at record levels. And if we keep pouring money into bloated subsidy programs where over half the budget gets stuck in red tape, people will just keep waiting. Karoline took it a step further now with a clear proposal. My plan is to reform urban zoning to increase the supply of affordable housing. We'll encourage private investment with smart tax incentives and cut construction costs by 30% by eliminating excessive unnecessary regulations from local to federal level. She scanned the audience, then concluded, people don't need big promises, they need a real roof over their heads, and I'm bringing a way to make that happen. The applause this time was longer. Few soft yes cheers came from the stands. Karoline didn't smile, just nodded slightly, then leaned back as if she knew that in a debate, saying just enough is an art. The audience fell silent, then the applause grew stronger than before. Leavitt continued, her voice like a perfectly told story. Recently, I met a family in Georgia, a hard-working couple who couldn't buy a home because prices were too high. They don't need subsidies, they need more homes built. My plan has been tested in states like Arizona, increasing housing supply by 15% in 2 years. Her words were specific, relatable, making the audience nod, sensing the feasibility. The host, noticing Leavitt's pull, guided the discussion forward. Miss Leavitt, you emphasize supply and efficiency, a pragmatic approach. Miss Crockett, how do you respond to the budget concerns and this alternative plan? She tied Leavitt's feasibility to an opportunity for Crockett to counter, keeping the debate seamless. Crockett, her eyes flashing with A spark of anger responded with heightened emotion. I respect the stories, but Miss Leavitt is putting corporate profits over people. My bill prioritizes the poor, not real estate companies. But her words lack data, and the personal attack made some audience members frown. She didn't address the budget call Leavitt had raised. Leavitt smiled, unruffled by emotion. Congresswoman, she said, her voice gentle but razor-sharp. Prioritizing people is what we all want. But your plan relies on an unrealistic budget. A recent study shows 60% of rental subsidy programs are delayed due to poor management. My zoning reform successful in Florida lowered average home prices by 10%. Do you have any data to defend your $50 billion figure? The question was a direct hit. The audience stirred a few murmurs of approval rising. The host, keeping the pace, interjected, Ms. Crockett, would you like to clarify the costs or details of your bill, especially since the budget is now central? She tied Leavitt's budget point to an opportunity for Crockett. The pressure was palpable. Crockett tried to regain composure, but her voice trembled slightly. We have to put people before profits, she said, repeating her earlier point without adding details. The audience began to grow restless. Some in the room shifted in their seats, a few shaking their heads lightly. The silence started to overtake the empathy, and on live TV, a pause can't linger too long. Sensing the atmosphere stalling, the host deftly stepped in to keep the pace, her eyes turning to the camera as if pivoting the show at just the right moment. Ladies and gentlemen, perhaps it's time to wrap up this heated debate on housing, a topic clearly posing challenges for both the administration and people across America. She paused, then continued with a firm but still objective tone. However, behind every spending commitment lies a fundamental question: where does the money come from? That brings us to our next topic: taxes. From utility bills to monthly savings, tax policy directly impacts the personal lives of millions of Americans. The stage remained vibrant, but the atmosphere had shifted to something tense and more focused. Ms. Crockett, you've emphasized the importance of investing in people through social programs, but in your tax policy, how do you balance support with fiscal responsibility? The audience leaned in. Many were waiting to see if this was Jasmine's chance to regain ground, or if Leavitt would steer the conversation once again. Jasmine Crockett sat upright, her eyes burning with determination, as if this were her last shot to turn the tide. She took a deep breath, her voice brimming with passion. The current tax system is crushing Texas workers struggling to pay rent. The ultra-wealthy get breaks while the middle class is left behind. I propose raising taxes on big corporations, cutting income taxes for the middle class, and expanding tax credits for low-income owners. Her words were forceful, tapping into the audience's sense of tax unfairness, especially those who felt the system was unjust. As the stage light shifted to Karoline Leavitt, she stood firm, her eyes radiating confidence. She began, "Thank you, Ms. Crockett, for raising this critical issue. However, we need to look at this holistically. Your bill, while well-intentioned, lacks feasibility in the current budget context. Instead of increasing spending, we should focus on cutting taxes for the middle class, letting them keep more money for essential needs, including housing." Leavitt pressed on, highlighting her plan's strengths. My plan includes eliminating taxes on tips, Social Security income for seniors, and overtime pay. Will also adjust state and local tax deduction caps, easing the financial burden on middle-class families in high-tax states like Texas. The studio audience grew more attentive, some nodding in agreement. Leavitt wrapped up with a call to action: we need a fair tax policy that helps every American, especially the working class, keep more money to care for their families and communities. The host, sensing the shift in the room, smoothly guided the discussion forward, maintaining the debate's rhythm. Miss Leavitt, you emphasize lowering living costs through taxes, a practical perspective. Crockett, how do you respond to this plan, especially given your concerns about favoring big corporations? She tied Leavitt's cost of living focus to an opportunity for Crockett to counter, ensuring a seamless debate. Crockett, her eyes betraying tension, responded with heightened emotion, I understand worker struggles, but Miss Leavitt is hiding the truth. Cutting taxes for small businesses sounds nice, but it's the big corporations that benefit, not families struggling to pay rent. But her words lack data, and the personal attack made some audience members frown. She failed to address the inflation call Leavitt had raised. Leavitt remained composed, her gaze sharp. Congresswoman, she said, her voice gentle but cutting like a blade, the middle class is the heart of my plan. Cutting personal income taxes helps them directly, and simplifying the tax code lowers costs for small businesses like the auto shop in Michigan. I mentioned your corporate tax hike for a recent study would raise consumer prices by 5%, driving up rent costs. Do you have any data to refute that? The question was a decisive blow. The audience stirred, a few soft chuckles rising at Crockett's unease. Crockett tried to regain composure, but her voice faltered. We need a tax system that's fair, not one that favors the rich, she said, repeating her earlier point without adding details. The audience grew restless, some shaking their heads. The studio buzzed with tension after these exchanges, where Karoline Leavitt consistently outmaneuvered Jasmine Crockett. The audience, now largely siding with Leavitt, eagerly awaited the next round. The host, a seasoned journalist with a calm demeanor and sharpness honed through years of live TV, stepped forward. The stage lights reflected in her focused eyes, her voice clear and emotive, modulating the atmosphere with the steady hand of a moderator accustomed to pressure and public scrutiny. Ladies and gentlemen, we've just had a lively discussion on taxes, where the cost of living and personal finances took center stage, she said, her eyes sweeping over the audience, from the working families in Texas that M. Crockett represents struggling with bills to the economic policies Miss Leavitt shapes at the White House. Taxes impact the ability to invest in education, where we build the future for the next generation. Miss Crockett, you've emphasized supporting people. Does that perspective shape your education policy? Jasmine Crockett sat upright, her eyes flashing with a spark of hope, as if this were her final chance to salvage her performance. She took a deep breath, her voice brimming with passion. Thank you to the show. Education is a fundamental right, but in Texas, schools are underfunded, teachers are underpaid. I propose increasing public school budgets by 30%, making community college tuition free, and expanding financial aid for students. Her words were forceful, resonating with the audience, especially those worried about education costs. A few claps rang out, though faint, and on X posts began appearing praising Crockett for fighting for fair education. Karoline Leavitt, with undiminished confidence, gave a slight smile, her eyes lighting up like a strategist who'd prepared thoroughly. She spoke, her voice clear and compelling. Education is the foundation, but increasing budgets without reform is just pouring money into an inefficient system. My plan focuses on trade schools, increasing skills training budget by 20%, and cutting college administrative costs by eliminating redundant regulations. This equips students with practical skills debt-free. She paused, her gaze connecting with the audience. We need to prepare for jobs, not just hand out degrees. The audience fell silent, then applause erupted strong and sustained. Leavitt continued, her voice like a story told with sincerity. I met a student in Iowa who dropped out of college because he couldn't afford it, but trade school welding got him earning $60,000 a year. My plan expand programs like that, which have boosted technical jobs by 25% in test states. Her words were specific, relatable, making the audience nod, sensing the practicality. Crockett, her eyes betraying tension, responded with heightened emotion. I understand the value of trade schools, but Miss Leavitt is overlooking students who want college-free tuition in Shaw's fairness, not prioritizing programs that only help a small group. But her words lacked data, and the attack made some audience members frown. She didn't address the spending efficiency call Leavitt had raised. Leavitt remained composed, her gaze sharp. Congresswoman, she said, her voice gentle but cutting like a blade. Fairness is our shared goal, but your plan ignores reality. Free community college across America. She $15 billion with a firm, but still objective tone. However, behind every spending commitment lies a fundamental $5 billion plan. Where does the money come from that brings us to our next trade school students? Do you have any data to monthly savings? The question was a decisive blow. The audience stirred of millions of Americans. The stage remained vibrant, but the atmosphere had shifted. Tried to regain composure, more focus, but her voice faltered, lacking confidence. We have to invest in all students, not just a small group. But in your tax policy, said, repeating a familiar message without fresh conviction. The audience studio atmosphere were waiting to see, but attention remained fixed on the two women facing, or if Leavitt would steer the conversation. Once again, Jasmine Crockett, but the lack of pride, her eyes burning with determination, as if this were her last shot to turn the tide. They were searching for the decisiveness and sharpness Crockett had, and yet delivered. The system is crushing the moment once again, deftly struggling to pay rent. The ultra wealthy profound, while the middle class is left behind. I propose raising taxes not just in politics, but in every family's life. Middle class and expanding different perspectives for low-income earners. Her word were forceful. The future of our audience's sense of Crockett and Miss Leavitt for your contribution. Those who felt the system was unjust as the stage smiled, looking at the two Karoline Leavitt. Clear that despite differences in approach, both sides want to build a better future. Thank you, Miss Crockett, for immigration to education. Each issue, however, we need to require holistic understanding. While well-intentioned, opposing views, Karoline Leavitt budget context. Crockett nodded their eyes, spending we should focus on cutting taxes, but also not lacking respect for each other. The host turned to the audience, her voice ringing out once more. Leavitt pressed on highlighting her plan's strength. Today's debate, though intense, was also necessary, giving us a clearer view of the challenges our nation faces. Overtime pay will also adjust joining us on America Unfiltered. We look forward to seeing you in our next discussions. Have a great evening. The stage lights like Texas, the studio audience echoed more. The studio, Karoline, some nodding in agreement. Leavitt wrapped up with a call to action. We need a fair tax carrying their own strategy for the political, especially the working class. The show ended. More money to care for. Lights went out. Families, the aftermath of the clash, host sensing the shift in social media, smoothly guided outlets. Karoline forward, maintaining commanding victory. Miss Leavitt, you emphasize lowering living costs as an emerging political star. Jasmine, Crockett, how do you respond to this storm of criticism given your concerns about favoring big audio clip calling conservative voters ignorant? Both now enter the post-talk show phase to counter, ensuring a seamless debate. Crockett, mired in crisis, tension, responded with victory stay. Emotion, I understand work just hours after Leavitt is hiding the truth, cutting taxes for small businesses sounds nice, but it's the big corporations that benefit, not families struggling to pay rent. But her words lack affordable housing, low taxes, and practical audience under the afternoon sun. She stood on an outdoor stage. Her voice raised. Leavitt persuasive. We need policies that let you keep your money. Her voice gentle but cutting like to succeed. The middle class, she said, had eyes connecting with each personal income taxes. Member, she shared the story of an electrician in the Michigan who benefited from a tax cut plan, prompting auto shop in Michigan. I mentioned crowd charts illustrating how immigration and housing plans were projected on a large screen, highlighting their feasibility. Do you have any data to refute the question? Was a decisive blow. The audience hoping to regain trust, but the mood was somber with only a few dozen attendees, mostly loyal supporters, but her voice faltered. Need a tax bill emphasizing support for the homeless, but rich, she said, repeating her earlier enthusiasm without adding conservative activists. The audience showed up holding mocking shaking their heads. The studio buzzed with tension after these exchanges, where Karoline Leavitt tried to consistently outmaneuver Jasmine. Betrayed the audience, now largely siding with social media. Awaited quickly spread images of the sparse crowd. Leavitt with a calm demeanor and following evening, facing a friendly host, you laid out a practical approach to education and taxes on America Unfiltered. The voice clear and emotive. How do you make modulating the atmosphere with a steady hand? Leavitt smiled, her voice smooth pressure and lawmakers to ensure. Ladies and gentlemen, we've just had a lively discussion on trade school training. I prioritize an independent report just confirmed our plan. She said, her eyes sweeping over the audience from the working families nodded, and the interview went viral on TikTok, struggling with bills praising economic policies. Miss Leavitt Crockett, the White House taxes impact the ability to invest in education. With Democratic leaders in Washington for the next generation. In meeting room, emphasized supporting people. Veteran lawmakers shape your education policy. Damage the party's image upright, her eyes flashing. One said bluntly, as the audio final chance to salvage her performance. Crockett tried to defend her voice, brimming voice trembling. It was taken out of context. I just wanted to stress but in Texas schools are underfunded. No one was convinced allies like AOC and Sanders stayed silent, offering by 30%, leaving her feeling isolated. Anonymous Democrats expanding financial aid for students to learn how to debate before resonating with the audience, especially those worried about Leavitt received praise from Republican rang out, though, including an ex-post began appearing praising Crockett for fighting for fair education. Brings practical solutions. Undiminished confidence gave a slight smile, but in her eyes she smiled as she read the comments. Her team thoroughly pushing the media voice clear and compelling infographics, comparing her foundation but increasing highlighting her opponents. Without reform is just pouring money into an narrative. Crockett has no chance. Crockett sitting alone schools, increasing skills training budget. Scrolled through the posts, each cutting college administrative Crockett by eliminating redundant made it look like an amateur student with practical skills. What can we do? She paused, her gaze connecting with the audience. We need to prepare for jobs, not just hand out degrees. But Crockett couldn't rest. She knew her image was crumbling in the silence. Sustained Leavitt continued her voice like a story told in the congressional hearing room. I met a student in Iowa who dropped out of college because he couldn't afford it, contrasting with an undercurrent of tension earning $60,000 a year. My plan expansion Karoline Leavitt, which has boosted technical jobs by 25% before a congressional committee to present specific relatable, making the audience immigration, housing, taxes, practicality. Crockett education betraying confident responded with like an undefeated General Crockett contrast or a strained expression is overlooking students who want college-free tuition defeat Leavitt open fairness not prioritizing her voice only help a small group. She presented her policy package and the attack made some audience members legal citizenship pathways urban zoning reform to had raised affordable housing opposed her 15% sharp congresswoman. She said her voice expanded trade school training age fairness was backed by charts. But your plan. Data and real. Ignores reality, administration people across American $15 billion. My policies aren't just feasible, however, affect every spending limit suitable jobs. Fundamental $5 billion where does the money? She said her eyes set to our next moderate Democrats. Do you have any data to defend persuaded policy with a decisive blow? The audience on social media #Leavitt remains exploded again. But the atmosphere Crockett tried to regain. Hence, more trying to regain voice faltered, lacking her eyes betrayed. We have to invest in all students. Her housing bill emphasized. But in your tax policy, repeating a familiar message her voice flash conviction. We must studio atmosphere way too harsh, but attention. She argued, attempting to rekindle the passion. Leavitt would steer the conversation. Crockett tried Jasmine Crockett. The lack of pride, her eyes burning, only responding as if this were her last shot to turn the tide. Leavitt seated behind her voice and sharpness counter Congresswoman Crockett. The system is crushing the funding once again. Her voice struggling to pay recent ultra-wealthy sound subsidy middle class left behind. And it is always raising issues not just in $1 billion, but in every family's life, middle class, and expand different perspectives. The future of our youth belongs to Leavitt and Miss Leavitt for your contribution. Astonishing decision system immigration. She smiled, looking at the two economic benefits. Despite her eyes radiate both sides, once she built a glass. Thank you, Miss Crockett. Leavitt replied implication. Each issue, however, challenge requiring holistic understanding by well-intentioned, 18-month Karoline budget content murmurs noted their spending will focus preliminary committees, but also not lacking respect for each other. Money clips and vivid presentation went viral with comments as if highlighting her plans. Today's in contrast faced also necessary given housing clear review rejected by the seniors and over time lacking fees also joining us on American tax deductions. We look forward to the financial burden on middle class. I was missed on stage lights because she replied in a voice echoed more. No one cared. Caroline nodding in agreement. Leavitt described her all to their eyes still sparkle on carrying nailed the flame of politics, especially the working class. Show ended more money wasn't just a politician and family aftermath, but a rising star in the political world. Leavitt not only guided discussion forward, maintaining commanding victory across Leavitt. You emphasize congressional colleagues as an emerging political star. Jasmine Crockett, how do you respond to some opponents critically given your somewhere even ready to collaborate? Audio clip calling project Leavitt recognizing that Leavitt now entered a fleet phase, but sustainable one in months that followed. She continued to push for portraying Leavitt to respond education and career emotion. I understand just hours. Miss Leavitt is a model program cutting taxes. Young people find career opportunities, but the big corporation graduation the program family struggling to pay local business. But her words lacked housing, not personal attack, but also had real jobs. She stood on an outdoor stage, brave voice addressing the shortage of skilled labor policies that also began. She said her voice gentle and cutting like urban zoning. The middle class. She said her eyes not only boosted personal income tax, but also she shared the quality of simplifying the tax code benefited from working class family Photoshop and I mentioned crowd child was seen as a symbol of building a sustainable future projected on large driving highlight shows. Do you have any escalating Crockett question with decisive show the audience that made Leavitt the leader? The mood was generation only Crockett tried seated in reshaping the face of American politics. Need a housing bill emphasizing support for the political party. Richie said crowd lacked practical approach without the ability to act. Audience showed up leadership style as seen in other young tension after these exchanges. Her discussions about Leavitt tried to secretly outmaneuver eyes to trade audience now largely citing social media ways to spread images of class journalists with a calm demeanor and following facing a friendly eye. She laid out a practical backstage education congresses on America social media voice clear and emotive. How do you make modulating symbol atmosphere to those who Leavitt smiled her voice not just pressure and lawmakers to ensure about genuinely create a lively discussion trade school training prioritized or independent showdowns to just Caroline our plan. She said her eyes drooping over the audience reflect the political and social reality viral on struggling comments where preparation strategy connection determines the White House taxes dominated by media and door meeting with Democratic triumph through Washington preparation analyzing current emphasized data in real life. Veteran lawmakers their eyes education policy damaged trade school apprentice in Wisconsin. She knew once said control. As an audio leveraging social media to amplify, Crockett tried to defend her voice framing because she let emotions taken out of context. They just wanted to stress, but in Texas schools underfunded, no one was convinced that AOC's audio was saying her by 30%, making her feeling isolated with social expanding destroyer students learn how to forceful elevating individuals, especially those worried about, especially in a competitive environment, including expos, prominent senator Karoline, demand a balance fighting passion and brings practical solutions on every opportunity public job, but in her eyes she smiles research thoroughly prepared data thoroughly pushing tell relatable stories to connect don't feel like Crockett letting her foundation while forgetting highlighting solid without reform just pouring money shaping the narrative. Crockett has no chance Crockett's audio can become a disaster skills training scroll through 20% each cutting college setbacks by eliminating because in America made it look like an opportunities are always there skills can freeze them her gaze connecting line replies channel to follow jobs and not just hand out degrees. But Crockett showed down thanks she knew her image would see you in the next video. Sustained Leavitt continued her voice like a story told in the congressional hearing room. I met a student in Iowa who dropped out of college because he couldn't afford it, contrasting with an undercurrent got him earning $60,000 a year. My Planet talk show Karoline, Leavitt, and which has boosted technical jobs by 25% before congressional committee to present specific relatable making the audience immigration, housing, practicality. Crockett education betraying confident responded with like an undefeated general Crockett value contrast score a strained expression is overlooking students who want college free tuition defeat Leavitt open standing not prioritizing her voice only help a small sharp she presented her policy package border the attack made some audience members legal citizenship pathways urban zoning reform had raised affordable housing opposed her percent sharp congresswoman she said her voice expanded trade school training age fairness was backed by goal but your plan data and real life stories like the trade school apprentice she met in Wisconsin. My policies aren't just feasible, they've proven effective in test states boosting jobs and lowering living costs. She said, her eyes scanning the lawmakers. A moderate Democratic senator nodded, clearly persuaded. Reporters in the room scribbled furiously, and on social media the #Leavitt leads exploded again with posts praising her practical vision. Crockett stood trying to regain composure, but her eyes betrayed unease. She defended her housing bill, emphasizing support for the homeless and rent subsidies, but her voice lacked vitality. We must put people before profits, she argued, attempting to rekindle the passion from the talk show. But when a Republican senator questioned the $50 billion budget, she faltered, only responding, "We need to prioritize people." Leavitt, seated behind, gave a subtle smile, then rose to counter Congresswoman Crockett's bill lacks clear funding. She said, her voice low but sharp. A recent study shows similar subsidy programs failed due to poor management. My zoning reform costs $10 billion with proven results. The room fell silent. Senators nodded and Crockett lowered her head, offering no reply. The hearing continued, but the spotlight belonged to Leavitt. She answered questions with astonishing precision, from immigration details to the economic benefits of tax cuts. A Democratic senator, initially skeptical, asked about trade schools. Leavitt replied instantly, in Ohio, our pilot program increased technical jobs by 30% in 18 months. Her confidence prompted murmurs of approval in the room. Her bill gained preliminary committee support, a major step forward. On TikTok, clips of Leavitt's presentation went viral with comments calling her the future leader. Crockett, in contrast, faced total defeat. Her housing bill was rejected by the committee for lacking feasibility. As she left the hearing, reporters swarmed, asking about the leaked audio. I was misunderstood, she replied, her voice frail, but no one cared. A major newspaper article described her as a star that fizzled out, while Leavitt was hailed as the new flame of politics. Karoline Leavitt was increasingly proving she wasn't just a politician who could win debates, but a rising star in the political world. Leavitt not only succeeded in gaining voter support, but also scored points with congressional colleagues. Her intelligence, decisiveness, and communication skills made even some opponents shift their stance. Some were even ready to collaborate with her on major projects, recognizing that Leavitt's change wasn't a fleeting wave, but a sustainable one. In the months that followed, she continued to push reform programs, particularly in education and career development. Her New Path for Youth initiative became a model program for helping young people find career opportunities after graduation, the program paired trade schools with local businesses to ensure students were not only trained but also had real job prospects upon leaving school. This was seen as a breakthrough in addressing the shortage of skilled labor. Leavitt's legacy also began to take shape through her tax cut and urban zoning reform initiatives. These programs not only boosted the economy, but also improved the quality of life for millions of middle-class and working-class families. Thanks to these policies, Leavitt was seen as a symbol of building a sustainable future where families didn't face housing shortages or escalating living costs. It was precisely her sharpness and leadership that made Leavitt the leader of a new generation of politicians. She succeeded in reshaping the face of American politics, inspiring thousands of young people to pursue political paths. Her supporters called it a practical approach and the ability to change from the roots, a leadership style unseen in other young politicians before. Her discussions about Karoline's career didn't stop at short-term successes. She demonstrated that in an increasingly polarized political world, a rational voice focused on practical solutions and social justice can still find a firm foothold. Looking back from the halls of Congress to discussions on social media platforms, the name Karoline Leavitt has become a symbol, a testament to those who believe politics is not just about power struggles, but about genuinely creating positive change in people's lives. The story of the showdown between Karoline Leavitt and Jasmine Crockett on America Unfiltered reflects the political and social reality of the United States today, where preparation, strategy, and connection determine success. In a world dominated by media and social networks, Leavitt triumphed through meticulous preparation, from analyzing her opponent to using data and real-life stories about the electrician in Michigan or the trade school apprentice in Wisconsin. She knew how to control the narrative, leveraging social media to amplify her message. In contrast, Crockett failed because she let emotions take over, lacked data to support her $50 billion housing bill, and didn't anticipate the fallout from the leaked audio, which sank her. This reflects today's American society, where a small misstep on social media can destroy a reputation, while thorough preparation can elevate an individual. The lesson is that in life, especially in a competitive environment like the United States, success demand a balance between passion and strategy. Learn from Leavitt before every opportunity, from job interviews to presentations. Research thoroughly, prepare data, and tell relatable stories to connect. Don't be like Crockett, letting emotions lead while forgetting to build a solid argument. In the social media age, be cautious with your words, as a thoughtless remark like Crockett's audio can become a disaster. Finally, persevere like Leavitt in Congress, turning setbacks into springboards, because in America, opportunities are always there for those who seize them and learn from mistakes. Subscribe to the channel to follow dramatic political stories like the Leavitt Crockett showdown. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video with new lessons from the America Unfiltered stage.